So, who would like to start? It's very difficult in this layout. It's a shame we can't form a circle. It's a big smile you have there, Olivier. Thoughts, comments, insights.
They always never wait long enough. Somebody.
Okay, I'll just start. This is my own experience working with a new organization for about 4 or 5 months. Talking about conversation whether it's important. Yes, it is. This case was a classic case of my boss being a close friend. When he addressed the team in terms of what are the tasks that we need to do and deliver for this particular period and so on, he would always explain it quite detailed. But everybody sort of agreed and concurred, okay, we know what we want to do. But I noticed at the same time that whenever he sort of gives instructions, next thing I happen a few weeks after that, whenever they produce a report back or submit something back to him, he said, this is not what I want. And I've been observing that for about 3 cycles of reporting, and noticed that whenever the instructions were given, the team always scrambles and rush to do their research, analysis, and then after that come out with something. I noticed one thing, when did we ever sit down and talk about each other? Say, what did the boss actually want? What are the insights he's looking at? Have we understood what he wanted? Was it what was the report is actually his or someone else? And when I had my first sort of conversation with the team in Starbucks and our friends, we realized that, oh, okay, everybody has a different view of what he wants. And then, okay, there's a lot of things going on. There are good things, there are bad things, there are good ideas. Let's add on to all this and give him some options before we actually finish it. And he was really happy because finally he said, at least I've got an option to decide earlier which way to take. Because he said, he also admitted that I should know what actually went to this my boss.
And I think that's a really, really good point. I mean, I think so often in meetings like that is that people go away. Everybody goes away with a different view as to what's been agreed. And if you have the conversation, then I can say, well, I thought we were doing this. You say, no, that wasn't what he meant. You can then call the boss over and say, could you explain this again? This wasn't terribly clear. And this whole idea that when we talk at people, that they take away exactly what we said, almost as if there's some sort of error correction protocol, between our heads. It's not like that. It's not the way that human communication works. So I think it's it's not quite a cafe, but it's like opening up meetings. And too often at meetings, you have the boss or the team leader presenting to the group, and then they say, any questions? And there are no questions, and everyone goes away with a different view, rather than having that conversation at the end before, say, taking questions. More thoughts or comments?
Is conversation important? My comment from one of the members is as important as life itself.
Good.
I agree with that. I think one has to get deeper into it to understand this one. Personally, I think conversation is very important and is often overlooked for many reasons. So, what is one thing that I would do? I've scribbled a few words here. It's like, a cafe like this to be effective, the people must have a common issue, common ground. I think that's a prerequisite for an effective cafe. And participants must be motivated to want to find a solution to their issues. And sharing the same value system. Get rid of all the political obstacles and political factors. These are all the cleaning that one has to do to come to a cafe in order to talk openly. And last but not least, the people must share the same aspirations. So back to the point, there are two issues that I think quite close to my heart is social work and the fact that aging society is a world issue. The question from Thomas earlier as to can knowledge cafe be applied? I think it can be very effectively applied because this is a group of people who are going to share experience. And currently I think there's a lot of obstacles and not listening to that kind of thing going on. And I think there's a lot to learn from this aspect. That aspects of sharing experience from the age group and the question of getting more people together to create a social network to make society a better place. That's my point. Yeah. Thank you.
Thoughts or comments? Else?
I say I like that. That's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I see today, as I get older, I look around the world and we're just faced with so many problems. Whether it's crime, whether it's poverty, whether it's depletion of resources, whether it's global warming, whether it's pandemics, whether it's our education systems failing, our financial systems failing. I'm not too sure that I can see anything around the world that is actually working terribly well. And I look at it and say, well, how are we going to address these problems? And it's not the total solution, but unless we start to have these open conversations, these creative conversations, and start to explore, some of the potential solutions and actually get on some problems better, we're not going to survive much longer. So I think, to my mind, conversation is key to our future.
While this topic seems to be very interesting, but I am from India and we are a very hierarchical, feudal kind of society. And I am wondering whether within organization the same kind of feudal system operates, where there are hierarchies, etc. And especially in an organization where the boss is autocratic or dictatorial, having a conversation where people open up and kind of criticize, it could open up a whole lot of issues, and then again there are the dynamics within organization, turf wars, interpersonal relationships, interdepartmental issues. So, whereas this cafe concept would be ideally very useful, but I wonder how one could really work it out. For instance, at our table I was speaking to Mary, and she's working within a university, civil service college, where the dean sits with his people and they discuss issues. So the dean necessarily has to be somebody who's a benevolent kind of a person, who's open to criticism. But if he's a closed guy, and if he doesn't is not open to critical observations about the way he operates, the policies and procedures. So how could one deal with these issues, you feel?
Yeah. And a lot of those issues, the politics, the hierarchy, all the issues you mentioned there are difficult issues, and it's not just, I think, in India, but as a one level or another, those issues exist in every organisation, every society. They're just maybe more critical in others. I think if you're looking to kind of open up the conversation, you've got to be a little bit political yourself, and if you're trying to have a conversation or a cafe to ensure that maybe you don't have a hierarchy represented in the room. If you know that if the boss is in the room, it's going to kill stone dead conversation because people are going to be afraid to be open, then maybe that's not an appropriate way to run the cafe. Maybe you need to be a little bit underhand and have the cafe, have the conversations when he or she is not there. And I think you've actually got to be critical and a little bit candid yourself in terms of how you do it and start to slowly open up things. But there's no simple solution. If you've got a actually totally autocratic boss, you are not going to change him or her in a hurry. A few years ago, I did a lunch cafe in Croatia, and I think the question again I posed to the group was, what are the barriers to knowledge sharing in your organisations? Now, normally when I pose that sort of question to a group like this, all sorts of issues come up. Whether it's knowledge is power, whether it's the lack of appropriate structures, lack of IT structures, and a lot of issues come up. In Croatia, there was only one issue that was being discussed at all the tables, and it was the mindset of the senior managers. It seemed that all the senior managers were elderly men. They were in their 60s. They had grown up in the communist era. They were command and control autocratic managers. And they were trying to figure out how they could change these people. And they came to a conclusion. Do you know what it was? To wait for them to die. They didn't think there was any way they were all men pretty much would ever change, because that was the system they'd grown up in, that was the culture they'd grown up in. They weren't going to change. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that's always the solution, but I think a lot of the time, when you've got all these practical losses and political systems, it's not easy.
You cited some examples of ING, etc., some organizations where it worked. So what would be the areas, how did they approach the problem? How did they kind of resolve this issue of hierarchies and the barriers, the silos, etc.? How did they address them?
I'm not too sure exactly how they address them. I think in some organisations you've got managers who understand the importance of the welcome conversation and will give their people the freedom to experiment, if you like with the ING Bank Academy. In other organisations, they won't listen, and if you attempt to do it, you're going to get fired. How do you convince people of the value of the cafe as a conversation? And I guess varies from organisation to organisation. I think a big part of it, that Dexter suggested earlier, that we get the managers themselves to experience the cafe, we get them to experience the value of the conversation, and just maybe they'll start to earn a little. I wish I had a magic wand or a simple solution that I could give you, but of course the real world doesn't have that.